Welcome to our continuing YouTube video series on employment law, specifically focused on termination and severance pay. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal, and in this particular video we will be focusing once again upon employees in the oil and gas sector as well as those employees in the mining sector, and particularly focusing on those individuals who are working out in the field. That means working in the oil patch, the oil sands, mining sites, typically working long hours and working on an hourly wage with bonuses, allowances, other incentives, all tied into the hard, arduous work that they've been doing. And now, all of a sudden, they find themselves receiving a termination letter. Oftentimes, this is out of the blue, and the business is simply saying, selectively picking people for no particular reason, it seems, and saying, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. And they make these calculated decisions, and all of a sudden you find yourself wondering, what do I do next? Well, for those particular individuals, it's extremely important that you don't procrastinate. You need to take the appropriate action and engage with legal counsel and determine what your rights are and what you are actually in effect being offered, and if the offer is appropriate under the circumstances. Now, what we do myself is what we look to do is provide an initial assessment as to where you stand with respect to your termination and severance pay package. Because what we tend to find is there's large discrepancies and oftentimes large legal and statutory issues attendant with employees in the oil and gas sector and the mining sector who've been working out in the field and working typically on an hourly basis, sometimes also a salary basis individuals, but most likely those individuals who have been working on an hourly basis and putting in long hours, lots of overtime, lots of incentive pay, lots of bonus pay, and the like. And those persons in particular really need to get an assessment done and understand what is happening. Because what we find, at least myself, is that those individuals unfortunately are getting effectively played by their employers or former employers when they are terminated and they get these pay packages. There's not an expectation that those individuals will seriously scrutinize what is being provided to them. And it is because of that very fact that many of these employers who are making oftentimes 10 times as much as yourself have far greater job security and also have very tight investments in the company, believe or allow themselves to perpetuate a situation where they say we're going to get away with paying as little as possible. And they premise this on the understanding that even where certain individuals challenge the system, that they may initiate court proceedings, but they're never going to go too far with those court proceedings. And even then, they're going to concede and settle and not gain all that they want, but only get a fraction more, which is still off of what, in our estimation, is oftentimes their legal and statutory entitlement to something far more significant by way of a buyout or payout from their former employer. Nonetheless, the employer plays the odds and then also takes advantage of the settlement terms, to keep that whole thing under wraps, under confidentiality. And it's similar to when people just take it out, they sign releases, which is very much in the form of confidential arrangement with their former employer. So the employer is not getting necessarily knocked publicly for their trying to undercut their former employers when they pay them out. And this is sort of a cruel game that these large corporate employers play with their former employees, especially those in the oil and gas and mining sector who work out in the field. It's very unfortunate, but that is a case that many of these employees are facing when they get fired, laid off, terminated, or whatever you want to call it. But there are strategies available. There are ways to identify and pursue the money that you are owed. And that is why you really need to engage with the right legal counsel, such as ourselves, and speak to us and let us ascertain whether or not there is a viable legal avenue through which it is possible to pursue what you are legally and statutorily entitled to, and in a manner that protects your interests and properly advances your interests and has a far greater chance of attaining what you are owed without breaking the bank in pursuing it. And that is ultimately the challenge. And is a challenge that the employers know and they try to take advantage of. But what we believe we have come up with is a strategy to circumvent, in part, the employer's reluctance and ability to manipulate the system to their own advantage in certain circumstances, and instead we utilize the employer's crudeness, their arrogance against them, and in so doing we're able to work it to get that much greater of return for individuals like yourselves, protect yourselves, and come out on top. And that is ultimately the name of the game. But it also dictates that you take appropriate action as soon as possible and engage with legal counsel. Do not procrastinate. Speak to a lawyer. Speak to ourselves. Get that initial assessment, which is not going to cost you anything, at least when it comes to myself. We will take a look, provide you with our assessment, provide you with our strategy, and we'll believe, especially in those circumstances what we're talking about in this video, those individuals will oftentimes have a great opportunity to work on a great structure with ourselves in pursuing their employer with respect to monies owed, if there are substantial monies owed and there's a statutory and legal basis with which we can argue effectively. Naturally, not all circumstances lend themselves to this strategy, but what we have seen in the last while is that there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of underpayments that are going to individuals in the oil and gas sector, in the mining sector, and in particular to those individuals who are working out in the field, working on hourly rates, putting in long hours, having committed a good part of their working lives towards these companies, and they are getting severely underpaid. And these are underpayments which are not permissible under law and under statute, but employers believe, through their own arrogance and through the failures of other employees to oftentimes pursue the angles that we pursue, that enables them to continue to perpetuate the system, and you should not allow it to happen to yourself. And if it is happening, we can help you identify those situations and provide an effective strategy through which we are confident where the facts line up appropriately to effectively provide you with that legal representation so as to get the optimal amount out of your former employer. So yes, it can seem somewhat daunting. The paperwork can seem somewhat challenging, but what you need to do is to take action. You need to engage professionals like ourselves and speak to us about what you can do, what you should do, and what may well be available to yourself, because you are often entitled to significantly more than what is on the table. And if your lawyer understands it and your lawyer has an effective strategy, you have a far better chance of getting what you are due. So I hope you found this YouTube video informative, and if you're looking for someone to really tackle your termination and severance pay, following your removal, your firing, your termination, your dismissal or layoff from your particular job, and in particular those who are in the oil and gas sector and the mining sector, we'd more than be happy to work with yourselves and provide you that initial assessment we've talked about. And we wish you all the best and good fortune in this challenging and difficult time of being out of your previous job. Thank you.